Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So while we wait for people to join, I just want to make some brief announcements. I want to encourage people to follow me on Twitter at New Pos Blog. Also, I want to encourage you to like my Facebook page, New Possibilities. And I have an upcoming art show and reception, and I want to encourage you all to come out. It will be here in Baltimore, Maryland, at the Mansion at the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. It will be on October 9th at 3 p.m. I hope to see you there. Again, the theme will be fighting against police brutality. It will be an artistic protest against police brutality. So I saw this story on Facebook, and it's a really good story, and I just had to share it with you. And it deals with my alma mater, Howard University. I went to Howard. It's a great university. Some of the best years of my life were spent at Howard. That's where I first gained political consciousness, Black consciousness. And that's what got me involved in the movement for freedom, justice, and equality for our people. So Howard was very important in my life, and Howard is a very important institution. Some of the greatest Black minds come from Howard University. Some of the best and brightest people in our history come from Howard University. And, I can name names for infinity, basically, of all these great people that came from Howard University, came through Howard and were professors at Howard. I could go on and on. But I saw this news, and it just makes me proud as a Howard graduate to see this happen. So I'm going to share this article with you all. I'll share my screen first. So there was a tenure controversy involving Professor Nikole Hannah-Jones. She was seeking tenure at UNC, and they basically blocked her, for a period of time. People were trying to prevent her from getting tenure, and I believe that it was in part at least due to her involvement in the 1619 project. As we know, there's been this whole push against critical race theory being taught in schools and universities. And I think that basically this is a situation where she faced backlash because of that. So this article from NPR goes into detail, and so I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from this article. It says, less than a week after trustees at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill belatedly voted to grant tenure to New York Times reporter Nikole Hannah-Jones, Howard University announced that Hannah-Jones will instead be joining its faculty. Also, it announced that it was hiring Ta-Nehisi Coates. He's the author of Between the World and Me. He's written other great books, books about the Obamas. He's written a powerful essay making the case for reparations. He's one of my favorite writers. He also recently wrote a novel called The Water Dance, an excellent novel. This brother went to Howard around the time when I went to Howard. I didn't know him personally or anything, but I know people who know him. And he's also a native of Baltimore. He's originally from Baltimore, and that's where I live right now. So this is a proud moment for Black people and for Howard University in particular. And this article goes on to point out how their positions were funded by $20 million in donations from the Knight Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, and the Ford Foundation, as well as an anonymous donor. So this made it possible for them to hire these great Black minds to work at Howard University. And this is great. I mean, it is truly great that a Black professor doesn't have to deal with the racism at a white university. She's able to go to, the Mecca. That's what Howard is referred to, the Mecca, the greatest, it's basically the greatest Black college in America. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the greatest college, period. And, so that's a great thing that this sister is able to find refuge in her home among her people. And, too often, we've seen situations like involving Cornel West, for instance, where he's going on complaining and griping about his situation at Harvard and stuff like that. And when I see stuff like that, the first thing I wonder is like, why in the hell aren't you just teaching at a Black college or university? And I understand that there's probably like lesser pay or, some less benefits and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, why are you striving to fit into a place that doesn't want you and doesn't accept you? Why not embrace your own and celebrate your own and join your own and build your own? Instead of crying for these people to accept you and all that kind of stuff. Imagine how powerful Black universities would be, how much more powerful they would be if all these and they have great scholars at these schools, but if all these people that have all these positions at these elite white universities, if they were to devote their time and their energy to serving Black colleges, just imagine how much more powerful Black colleges would be, like how much of a, intellectual juggernaut these schools would be and stuff, if these great minds were to join them instead of begging and scraping and pleading for acceptance in these predominantly white spaces and all that kind of stuff. And the same is true for athletics. Like, just imagine if all these Black athletes, if all the Black elite athletes were to go to just HBCUs and concentrate their energy there. Like, can you imagine how much wealth that would bring to the Black colleges and universities? We know that most of these great athletes are Black in a lot of these sports, like basketball and football and all that kind of stuff, and other sports. Just imagine if all of them, all these up and coming athletes were to play at only these Black universities. That would be a great thing. And, this article goes on to talk about how Hannah-Jones won a Pulitzer Prize for her 1619 project. And what I'm going to do right now is just go into a little bit of detail from Wikipedia about this project. So it basically says that the 1619 project is a long form journalism project developed by Nikole Hannah-Jones and writers from the New York Times and New York Times Magazine, which aims to reframe the country's history by placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the United States national narrative. And a lot of people took issue with that. They took issue with this project and all that kind of stuff. You had Trump and his people put together a commission to undermine this whole project and all that kind of stuff. And now you have these right-wing jurisdictions, as I mentioned before, trying to ban critical race theory from universities and schools and stuff because they want to suppress the truth. They want to give us a fairy tale type of narrative of slavery. They want to gloss over the atrocities and the continuing legacies of white supremacy, racism, and enslavement and Jim Crow and all that kind of stuff. They want to gloss over that history and give you some history looking through rose-colored lenses and stuff, where they downplay everything. Like back in the day when they had those slave films to make it seem as if slaves were just happy to be enslaved, just happy to be working for the white man and for the slave master and stuff. That's what they want to do. And that's without a doubt one of the reasons why people oppose the system. And this article talks about how this news was a blow to UNC. And it goes on to talk about how trustees declined to consider granting her tenure. And it said that this was a highly unusual move considering the relevant academic leaders that backed her tenure. And it talks about how this one person, Walter Hussman, who gave, a $25 million donation to the School of Journalism there, helped lead this effort against her. Some of the, he was one of the people opposing her. And this goes on to say that some prominent scholars that criticize, it talks about like the criticism and everything. It said that Hussman said he was given pause by some prominent scholars' criticism that Hannah-Jones distorted the historical record in arguing that the protection of slavery was one of the founding fathers' primary motivations in seeking independence from the British. So, that's one of the reasons why they were critical of her project and all that kind of stuff, because they want to paint these founding fathers as if they are patriots and all that kind of stuff. They want to gloss over the fact that while these people were writing these beautiful documents, like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, talking about freedom and liberty and all these things, while they were writing about all these ideals of democracy and equality, they were enslaving Black people. They didn't have any regard for Black lives or Black people, period. They didn't even view us as people, as human beings, as men or women. They viewed us as commodities. They viewed us as property to be sold, to be used, to be abused, to be raped, to be brutalized, and to be oppressed in every imaginable way. So they don't want people to have that real image of slavery and all that kind of stuff. And that's why they, attack this sister. And so, so this article goes into a little bit more detail, but I think that this is great news. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. I think that this is great news. It's a very positive development to see that these strong Black thinkers have joined, Howard University's faculty. And I hope that they stay there for a significant period of time, because a lot of times what you have are these white elite institutions who lure these Black scholars away from the Black community. And it's like what they end up doing is, giving all this intellectual power to these institutions that don't serve Black people. And instead of educating their own people on these issues, they're educating these white elites that, that will be running these corporations and all that kind of stuff. That's who they're educating. And I'm not sure whether or not those people actually benefit from that quote unquote education. So those are my thoughts about this. Yeah, so shout out to everybody in the chat room and shout out to people who will be watching later. I'm not really familiar with what's going on at Delaware State College. So if you can tell me in the chat what's happening there, I can look into that and find out what's going on there. I'm very interested in that. Yeah, so I just had to share my thoughts, my quick thoughts about this. This was something that's very important that I just had to share with you. It's a very important development that you had this sister who was being persecuted for her scholarship, persecuted for, speaking the truth to power and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the situation. And now she's at a Black university. And this is just like a reminder of some of the drawbacks. And I'm not one of these people who are critical of integration, completely, or the civil rights movement. But this is an example of some of the drawbacks that come with, this ideal of integration. Yeah, so I'm going to look more into that issue, Elaine, to get more information. And I may talk about that in a later live stream or video. So again, I want to thank people for tuning in. Again, I will be on here tonight doing back-to-back live streams. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I encourage you all to continue to rock with me. Like, if you're not able to stay up tonight and watch, join me live, feel free to check out the videos afterwards, and tell me what you think. So please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings. Have a good evening, and I will see some of you in a few minutes. Peace.